This is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher, mother!
Secret lover.
What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is, of course, the Screen Watching Podcast, your favourite podcast dedicated to what Simon and Dan have been watching on screen. Forget all the other podcasts focused on what Dan Barrett and Simon Foster have been watching. Instead, this is the one that you want, I promise. This is the 100% bona fide original, except no substitutes. On the podcast this week, we're going to take a look at the brand new Max TV series called The Pitt. Is it an ER ripoff? We'll find out. Nosferatu, it's a vampire Dracula type movie playing in a cinema. Are you saying no to Nosferatu or yes Feratu? We'll find out on that one as well. We're going to dive into a whole bunch of the other things that are currently playing in cinemas because it is a big prestige week for movies in the big screen, like movies that adults can go and see, but not like adult movies, which I think we can all agree is very unfortunate. Folks, this is Screen Watching. Stick around.
This is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher, mother!
Secret lover.
What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
Folks, this podcast continues to be Screen Watching. My name's Dan Barrett, joined by Simon Foster.
Yes, Feratu, that's one of your best. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Screen Watching. It is great to be back. You're absolutely right. It is a very busy week for movies, a prestige or otherwise, and some quality TV out there. Or is it? That's what we're about to find out. Let's jump straight into it, Dan Barrett. Review time.
Look, let's not do review times. I want to just tell people what happened.
Oh, yes.
Simon was like, hey, I'm going to talk about Nosferatu. I replied back saying, don't you want to talk about Conclave instead? And this is a direct quote for us. This is exactly what Simon said. Simon said this: how about you shut the fuck up? I'm going to talk about the other big movie of this week. Thank you very much. Let's play the clip.
It is like a dream. It was our wedding. When we turned around, everyone was dead. The stench of their bodies was horrible. Standing before me was death.
We were all very excited when it was announced quite some time ago that Robert Eggars' new film would be a version of the Count Orlok story, Nosferatu. Nosferatu is synonymous with classic cinema. The Max Schreck original silent film stands as one of the classics of the form of cinema. There is a Wim Wenders version from 1979 with Klaus Kinski and Isabella Gianni, which by all accounts I've never seen, but it's pretty terrific. And now we have Robert Eggars, who's done some pretty amazing work over the years. He debuted with The Witch, the film that introduces us to the joys of Anya Taylor-Joy and made us all terribly frightened of big goats. He's also done The Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. He's done The Norseman, which was a big, sweeping, very expensive flop with Nicole Kidman and Alexander Skarsgård a couple of years ago. And with Nosferatu, he's still got the keys to the kingdom with a very big budget, a top-tier cast, all in the service of his very intricate, very detailed, almost raffia work, sort of lace design, cinematography, and set design work that is beautiful to look at. Is it scary, which is a crucial part of any Nosferatu story? It is in parts, but not entirely, not sort of an ongoing sense of dread that would justify its 2 hours and 12-minute running time.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Question from Dan Barrett.
Sorry, which parts were scary?
Well,
which parts were they exactly?
Yeah, okay. There's a terrific scare right at the start, ahead of the credit sequence, which had everybody jump out of their seat, and then we kind of waited another hour for anything else scary to happen.
I like the way you keep on saying everybody, as though everybody was waiting to see the Nosferatu remake. Everyone was waiting for, no, Simon, no.
We're kind of, look, there is...
Who is this? When did you become the king?
All I'm saying is that Robert Eggers is a very big deal amongst fans of the horror genre. His films have always been event movies. They have been, to varying degrees, effective in being frightening and creating a sense of dread. All of that was on the table when it was announced he was going to do Nosferatu. I think he's dropped the ball a bit here. I think this is very indulgent. None more so than Lily Rose Depp in the lead, in one of the key roles as Count Orlok's focus of passion. She is just playing to the back row with her performance in this one, which I don't know whether was brilliant. I think it's one of the great bad performances. The pluses here are Nicholas Hoult, Willem Dafoe returning to work with Eggers, an unrecognisable Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok, who's very chatty. He's got this deep sort of croaky voice that over long passages of dialogue becomes kind of grating and not very scary. It's got some beautiful images, but does it work as a exciting new interpretation of an old text or an old storyline? I don't know if it does. I don't want to sound like I'm sitting on the fence because there's so much to admire about this film. Did I like it? No, not really.
So I'm saying yes to Radu.
You stumbled over your own joke then. Well done.
Well, it's not even my joke. It's well and truly stolen from the internet site.
So you've seen this film?
So look, I saw the film. I went and
Okay.
saw it on New Year's Day because that's how you like to begin a
So
year,
you
with
kick off the year with your...
a bit of proper cinema.
Yep.
Yeah, so saw it in a group of three of us. One of the guys felt very similarly to you did in terms of Ms. Depp and her performance.
Mm-hmm.
I would say with that, I think that this is a film which is speaking not just to being a remake of Nosferatu as much as being a remake of like this kind of a movie. So this sort of speaks to a lot of the like Hammer horror films and a lot of the like this. It's a bit of a vibe.
Agree.
Vibe remake rather than necessarily a Nosferatu remake.
Sure.
Okay, and so I think that a lot of the elements of those films is a lot of bigger acting, okay, and a lot of very flowery dialogue, and so I think he's really hearkening to a lot of that as part of his film. But what I think is mostly interesting about the movie is that if it was only doing that, I don't think I would have liked this film at all. But I think this is a film that speaks really, really well to a cultural moment, okay, in the way that the best horror films do.
Sure.
Okay, the best horror films always have something to say about the current climate. And I haven't really heard anyone talk about this, but this is my textual reading of the movie, and this is why it absolutely worked like gangbusters for me.
Wow, okay.
There is a conversation being had, not by mature people like yourself and myself, okay, but certainly younger people, particularly sort of young men, who are finding their way into difficulty of relating to women. Okay, and so there's lots of conversations about the sort of alphas, the betas, the cucks, like all that kind of conversation.
Incels? Are we going down the incel
Well,
path
it's not
here?
quite the incel path, because the incels are people of whom, like, look, I'm a bit skeptical that incel culture is even really a thing. I think there's like a message board or two of people, and you know, it's been talked up a lot more than actually really exists with a lot of the terminology. But a lot of these terms come from the supposed cultural movement of the incels, where you're talking about the chads and all that sort of nonsense. But what this film is really about is you've got the Nicholas Hoult character, who's a beta male.
Yes.
Okay? And he doesn't realise that he's also been a bit of a cuck, because his now wife is someone who has had a dalliance with a man previously that he was unaware of. Okay, but the thing is that the man that she had a previous dalliance with was a proper alpha male. Okay, and so she may love the Nicholas Hoult character, but what she really wants is someone who knows how to... Simon.
Oh, here we go.
That's what she's after. So... what you've got here is a woman who just can't really give up on that idea that she's had a really good... Like, that's kind of what she wants to get back to. And the gross... Like, where I think the film doesn't quite work is I don't think that the movie monster they've created quite really makes enough sense as to someone of whom she would have had, like, a physical, like, attraction to.
True
I mean,
that.
I certainly appreciate, like, you've been out in the world, I've been out in the world. The sort of guys that women are into is often just fucking weird.
There's so few of us left.
You know, Well, I mean, I think that you'd be a great catch, Simon. Like, the fact that, you've had, relationships before doesn't necessarily surprise me, but sometimes you see, like, guys out in public and it's like, wait, women like that guy?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of becomes a bit of a mystery.
Yep.
And as someone who probably falls into more the Nicholas Hoult sort of style of, masculine man out there, okay, I sort of look at this sort of lumbering old generic vampire, like old gross guy, okay, being, I don't get it. But also, maybe there's like a pheromone thing where women are like, yeah, I'm totally into that guy. Like, I just don't get it. If I could understand that a little bit more, I would have bought into it just a little bit more than I do. But I do understand that this is a thing where she's had this relationship with this guy. This guy, I'm going to use the language again, he knows how to She's after that. She's not getting that from her current husband. And so when this guy kind of re-enters the picture a little bit, she can't really quite help it. There's a yearning, there's a lust, even though this guy's coming and doing some pretty reprehensible things. But just like in real life, the bad boys of the world are sometimes the men that women are actually drawn to. This is like the ultimate bad guy. And so she's just really after that. So when I looked at this, it spoke to that cultural moment at the moment where we're acknowledging that there's sort of these alpha males, there's beta males, and how people sort of react and want to operate within that kind of a sphere of self-understanding and where lust and passion kind of flow within that.
It's a well-made point, and a point that
I don't know. It's a well-made point. It's a point that was made, Simon.
No. I think it's got valid. I think it's valid in the way you put it forward. I do wonder how that relates to some of the other characters in the film. Obviously, the core characters you're absolutely right about. It is the Lily Rose Depp and the Count Orlok character. The character who was played by Tom Waits in the Francis Ford Coppola version, and who goes mad in the cell as Count Orlok draws closer.
It's like Renfeld or something.
Yeah, something like that. So it's interesting how the impact of this evil alpha male character has on the not just the women but the men around him. And the point you raise does lead us down a path of like really interesting conversation. So I'm not discounting it at all.
Which people aren't going to find on this podcast.
No, it's very rarely happens, I've got to say. Yeah. But the upshot of all that is, in a thematic sense, that's all very true. In a horror movie sense, I thought it stumbled badly.
But also just, I'm not a big vampire movie guy or vampire text guy. I understand he exists in things other than movies.
Yep.
They, the bloodsuckers. But like a general sort of recurring theme and motive that gets played around with is themes of lust and sexuality and all that isn't through.
Yep.
So as I think about like what I've purported to be like the thematic core of it, to me that actually speaks to the core of what the vampire myth has long been about.
It's true. No, you make a great point.
So I don't think you can just remove it from saying, well, it doesn't really speak to a horror movie. If anything, like this as one of those proto-horror movie villain monster types, like this has always been part of it. To me, this is just the modern interpretation of that.
Yep. Great point. Great point. Nosferatu is in cinemas. I do stand with our friends at PETA, who have complained that rats did not bring the Black Plague, and that the use of rats in that context in this film is a poor choice from Robert Eggars. So all power to PETA. Dan Barrett, what are you going to review?
I mean, sorry, Peter, but just pointing it out, vampires aren't really real either, and there's a whole bunch of shit in that movie that doesn't really exist. Sorry.
Oh, God.
Look, I'm generally very pro-Peter. I like what they were up to, but, that is just kind of nonsense. But anyway, folks, let's back out. Let's talk about the brand new streaming hospital drama. It's called The Pitt.
We've got some new faces with us today. Hi, come on over.
I'm so happy to be here.
Talk to me at the end of the day.
Clear.
Forceps.
Full suction. Med student down.
Welcome to the pit. Let's go save some lives.
Simon, this is something I've been looking forward to for a while. So when I sat down, there was a little bit of trepidation. Like, is this necessarily going to live up to what I was really hoping for? And I watched a couple of episodes and I was getting a bit of a vibe from it. But they made 10 episodes available to critics, and within a couple of days, I managed to blitz through all 10 very comfortably.
Or are you going against your policy of not only reviewing what the people can see, or are you going to do the whole 10?
I'm only going to talk about... Actually, I'm really just going to talk about the first episode.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, actually, that's not quite true. I mean, I need to talk about what the show's actually doing, but I'm not going to get into plot specifics on it. Okay. So on day one, I believe the first 2 episodes are being... made available, and then after that it goes weekly. But here's what the show is, okay, which is that It's a hospital drama. We've all seen hospital dramas before.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, like, you know, we are no strangers to the hospital drama. This has been a form of storytelling which has existed, obviously, literary,
Since
there's
the
been
dawn
hospital
of man.
dramas.
Yep.
But from a broadcasting perspective, there were radio serials that played around in the hospital space, but certainly the earliest days of TVs, when like 3 people had a TV, there were certainly hospital dramas at that point going
There are
forward.
caves in the south of France where there's hospital dramas drawn on the walls. It's been around for a long time.
No, exactly. And like George Clooney's in some of those cave drawings, because it's been around for a really long time at this point.
Yes.
But like, we're all familiar with the hospital drama. This doesn't reinvent the hospital drama, okay? But what it probably does is reinvents the streaming drama.
Oh, here we
okay,
go.
so the template for this one is quite obviously ER. Okay, we look at this. There's even a lawsuit from Michael Crichton's estate. They're not happy that this was the genesis of this was they were going to do an ER reboot series.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't get the Crichton family to sign off on it,
Yep.
and as a result, they kind of went their own way and created something which I actually think is not ER. So, look, I'm no legal, but I would sit down and if I was looking at, is this a blatant copy of ER, I would say absolutely no. The only things that are really crossover elements are the same thing that exists in any standard hospital drama. Like, it really is a show that's kind of doing its own thing. The only thing
Well, it
Well,
does
no,
have the
it is.
star of ER and the showrunner from ER, so there are some other elements, but I
Sorry,
take your
Simon.
point.
Is Noah Wyle not able to appear in another hospital drama ever before? Can he no longer work with Scott Gemmell on a hospital drama?
I'm just saying.
Look, that's the thing. So the reason I got excited about this was I was like, oh, this is ER by like another name. Okay, but when you actually start watching the show, it's not the same because there is actually a number of very key stylistic changes they've made here, which makes this actually feel fresh and original. Like, yes, I would have loved an ER remake. And if they titled this as ER The Pitt, absolutely fits into that world completely. Like, that's absolutely there. The fact that it's Noah Wyle and the fact that, look, let's be honest, his character in this isn't necessarily sort of sketched in. Okay, like they could easily have made him John Carter and the show would have changed nothing at all. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like that closely aligned to being an ER remake. Again, it's really quite different. The reason it's different is primarily because of this. And this is why it kind of upends like a streaming content change. So we've been watching a lot of streaming dramas. Let's go back to Netflix launching House of Cards. And what we started seeing was the rise of an HBO premium drama, okay, which started doing the exact thing that I'm always complaining about on this podcast, which is, it's not really 6 episodes of a TV show, it's a 6-hour movie.
Yes,
okay?
you have
And
mentioned that previously.
yeah, like freaking every week on this podcast. And it really frustrates me because it's like, well, let TV be TV from time to time. Like, you know, I think we all appreciate the novelty of being able to see a movie sort of stretched out that far. But when everything is doing that and they're kind of skirting away from what's enjoyable about TV, suddenly it becomes a lot of noise and things where you kind of feel like there's just something that's missing from that product as an experience level. Like we weren't really falling in love with a lot of those streaming programs.
No.
So it would be something which would come out, be 6, 8, 12 episodes long, run maybe 2, 3 seasons if you're lucky, and then that's gone. Okay, which means that you've probably got like the equivalent of almost a full season of old school TV within that. Okay, but also you've only got like 3 episodes worth of story really because I've stretched out a single storyline to 6 episodes. Okay, so like you weren't connecting with the characters in a way that the strength of TV is you connect with those characters. What they've done with The Pitt is they've created 15 episodes. I've only seen 10, but I'm making assumptions about the last 5. Okay, they've made a show which you could watch as a binge. And what you're watching is a program which is not like every hospital drama, which is that it runs for an hour and then you see the resolution, maybe it's a special 2-part episode, it might go into a second hour. But you'll see a patient come into an emergency ward, it's like, what's wrong with the patient? Let's take a look. You get involved in the human heartache and the emotion of it all, and then they stitch them up and push them out the door, and next week you got like an entirely new character. That kind of happens in this, but also you'll see characters come in on episode 1, and they're still there by episode 6 or episode 7, because what they're doing is seeing that as an arc carrying through, okay, but then you're seeing shorter arcs with other characters who might be there for 15 minutes, they might be there for 2 episodes, they might just interact. So you're actually seeing the way that a hospital works in real time because these 15 episodes are 15 hours of the hospital in existence. And it's a bit fluid in a way that 24 was always a bit fluid in the idea of being 24 hours. Like, it's 24 hours with some, a few tweaks sort of here
With
and
an
there
asterisk,
to make it work. Like, you never saw Jack Bauer go toilet. Like, that never happened. Right. Okay? But, you kind of make assumptions. And yes, there's a lot of events that really change the course of the story that seem to happen on the end of every hour for some reason. Why does that happen? What a coincidence. Okay, so you do have that element. So you could watch it as a 15-hour story running through, or you can also watch it weekly because the show is built and structured where at the beginning of every episode, yes, there can be very sort of slight cliffhangers, but they're not necessarily in a dun dun dun. They're sometimes in a, it's kind of interesting what's just happened to that character. I'd like to come back next week and sort of see more of that. So there's a lot of sort of ducking and weaving through these 15 episodes, which doesn't usually exist in these streaming programs.
So are you saying that's
back to a lot of old school TV? So they've taken the streaming format and woven in a broadcast network sensibility to it, which actually makes sense in a way that I haven't really seen in streaming before.
Okay,
in a way, it's a brand new type of streaming drama.
That is what I was going to ask you. Do you think this is sort of the first volley of shots, the first bit of reaction against the come on with a big splash, cover the sides of buses, but you're gone in 2.5 seasons sort of streaming show?
Look, sorry, I'll change that. You make a big splash, people watch the first 1 to 2 episodes and then move on to the next thing.
Yep.
And, often the shows aren't really built to do much more than those first 2 episodes. Case in point, if anyone's stuck with Day of the Jackal, which has a good 2-episode vibe, and then after that, oh my god, what on earth were they thinking, or were they not at all? Because that show stunk by the end.
So is this gonna seem like something? Oh, this is something you and I grew up with. Like, we understand, and you clearly understand it, in depth. And I know exactly what you're talking about. We grew up with this sort of stuff. But is this going to be like a new, fresh thing to the young modern audience who are part of what streaming is? Are we going to see this come sort of kind of not full circle, 180 degrees back to what we once watched, thanks to The Pitt?
What I'd say, I don't know if it's necessarily thanks to The Pitt. The Pitt's just kind of the show that's kicking this off, but also it's kicking it off in a really smart, clever way, and I think it's going to get quite a strong audience following on it. Like, because I'm not going to review the show so much as I'm reviewing what they're doing with the program, which I'm a very big supportive of. But the actual show itself, it's really good. I really like Noah Wyle as the focal point of this. He was always the star of ER. Okay. Like, that show was very much built around the Carter character, and he ducked and weaved his way through the entirety of that program. Like, he was the spine of ER. Here, he's much more the central character in almost every sense of it. And all the supporting characters are all kind of interesting, and they all do surprising, interesting things that goes along. The characters may be a bit more Grey's Anatomy than they are ER, but that's fine. Like, it's all good. It's an enjoyable, engaging program. We've got a shared friend in the form of Travis Johnson, who's a Sydney-based film critic.
Yes.
I know that he's watched it, and I forget exactly what he said, but basically he said, like, it's magnificent. Like, I think he latched into a lot of the same things I did in terms of feeling like a return to form for TV.
Good,
but
that's a plus.
What the big buzz in the industry at the moment is the desire to have what they call returnable shows. So this is the sort of show which people return to week after week because they like the characters, they like the general setting and vibe of a program. Okay, streaming hasn't really had that, and I think that broadly a lot of viewers of streaming programs were excited by, hey, this feels big and elaborate, this feels like there's really great acting and great production work, but when the show hasn't been on for 2.5 years, because it takes time between seasons on streaming, you forget who those characters are, you forget even what the point of it was, you don't have a strong enough attachment to it to want to come back to it.
I have seen so many season ones. House of Dragons is a classic example. I haven't gone back to that. Haven't gone back to season 4 of Murders in the Building. I haven't gone back to season 2 of Solo. So I get that absolutely.
Yeah, and so this is effectively them creating a returnable drama in a streaming format, because the thing with streaming is that people don't watch on a week-to-week basis. Like, they don't just, like, come in on something. They want to watch the episode that came before. So no one's going to come in and just watch, like, episode 4 of The Pitt, which is probably the best episode of the run that I've seen so far. Okay. Not to say the rest aren't great either, but, like, that one particularly, like, it just does things that are kind of really special. Like, no one's just popping in to see episode 4 and then I'll come back on episode 9. Like, people are going to watch, like, week after week. Okay, but you can sort of drop in. If you don't come back to it for 3 weeks and then just drop back in and start back up at episode 4, you kind of remember what's going on. They give you all the information you need to be able to pick it up and return to the drama.
Is there an alpha male character that females will want to inexplicably want to...
Simon, just because I used that language earlier in the podcast doesn't mean you can suddenly sink this into your smut hour. Look, there is a young hunky doctor who's got some inexplicable...
It doesn't require an answer, really. I'm just being smutty.
There's a young hunky doctor who's got some inexplicably great hair.
Ah.
Okay, there's quite a number of female doctors who maybe the women are interested in as well, but you know, maybe some men might be interested in them also.
Well,
Did you know that sometimes men are attracted to women? Did you know that was a thing?
I've read of it on the internet somewhere.
Yeah, same.
I've
read medical journals.
All right.
But, you know, it's a hospital drama. There's lots of young, attractive people doing all sorts of young, attractive things. Largely, it's a cast where there's a few character actors you've seen crop up in shows over the years that you'd be like, oh, I kind of know that face, but you probably don't really quite know them. Yeah. Noah Wyle is the draw. Bryan Cranston's daughter is one of the sort of ingenue young doctors that you're going to see in the program.
Nice.
But the young cast are all really good, with the exception of one person I'm not going to pick on too much here.
Ooh.
She's just not a very good character, and the actor doesn't really bring anything particularly special to it. But I'm not going to pick on them. I'm just going to say broadly, really great TV program, a great way to kick off the year. First 2 episodes are on Max in the US. It's going to be in binge here in Australia. Check it out. If you're not into hospital dramas, you're probably not going to dig too much here, but if you love the vibe of the hospital drama, you're in.
Well, that was a deep dive into the Pitt. See what I did there? What you need to do at this point is ask me what else have I been watching, which I can run through very quickly because this podcast is running way over.
Oh, it's like 30 minutes. Okay, yeah. What else have you been watching, Simon? Hit me.
All right, a lot of quality happening. I'm going to start out at the movies. All We Imagine as Light. You may not have heard of this film. It is an Indian film, but you will as the award season kicks into full gear. It featured very heavily at a certain award show that I'm not allowed to mention on this podcast the other night. All We Imagine as Light tells the story of 2 nurses living in Mumbai. One is very much a conservative, very shy, very sort of downtrodden woman who is really trying to get through life with her husband stationed over in Germany. The other is her roommate, who is a very young, very free-spirited, trying to hide her relationship with a Muslim boy. What they decide to do is go on a road trip back to the village where the elderly woman was raised and reconnect with their past and their strong female sense of who they are. This is a stunning film. It is so beautiful to watch. It's so great to see. Your comment about sort of serious films for growing up people, this is absolutely that. It's finding an audience outside of just the subtitled cinemas, and I hopefully that will continue. All We Imagine as Light has already won a whole bunch of festival awards and hopefully finds an audience going forward.
You opened that with a film you probably haven't heard of. I have absolutely heard of it because one of the cultural markers each year, which it's weird that's even become a thing, but every year, former President Barack Obama released a list of the movies and books that he enjoyed through the year. Yep. That was on the list. And whether he actually saw that movie or whether it was suggested to him by the intern, that remains a bit of a question that we all wonder. Okay, but that was absolutely on his list. And after seeing it on there, I checked it out. And
wonderful film. Yeah. Also doing the rounds is Lockerbie. Now, this is on your televisions, your small screens at the moment. It stars Colin Firth as Dr. Swire, who was the man who fought hard for the truth about how the bomb got on board the Pan Am flight that blew up and fell into Lockerbie village in Scotland, killing hundreds of people. Remains the UK's worst air disaster. What you said before about... I can't remember exactly how you put it, but you put it this way a few times, that film and TV being 2 different mediums, and film is a story told in one way and television is a story told in another way. I just kept thinking that this is a perfectly fine version of events and study in grief and a family's horror when they get the news of this and the father's determination to hear the truth come out. But it makes for very, not perfunctory, but very sort of standard kind of television drama. I kept wishing that a director of some visual flair and intellect had got hold of this for the big screen, and Colin Firth could have taken this to the big screen. It's a story that deserves to be told. in as big a way as possible, even if only to magnify the intense and intimate grief that this family and his nation went through. It's perfectly watchable and very sad in parts, and features some great actors doing great work. I just think it deserved a bigger platform to be seen on a bigger canvas. So Lockerbie's on.
Sorry, you want to finish your sentence?
Just Lockerbie's on Foxtel at the moment, and streaming on Binge. You probably know where it is, on Binge at the moment.
Streaming on Binge, yeah. Okay. Earlier in the week, you asked me, what are you talking about this week? And I didn't say Lockerbie, and you said you're not talking about Lockerbie, and it's pretty much for what you said. It's a drama series that does what I refer to as the billings. It does what just needs to be done, and nothing really more than that.
Yeah, that's which I think, given the subject matter of this, and there's been some, true story told, miniseries that would have handled this in a different way, but I thought it was good without being great.
Look,
now,
just the other thought as well is that if you are from the UK, or you're an Anglophile who's got a bit more of a connection to the UK than if you don't, you may find a bit more of a connection with this.
Which is kind of why I remember the immensity of the Lockerbie disaster, which is kind of why I tuned into it. I understand.
It's not just knowing that the event happened and remembering the event, but being sort of part of the cultural makeup of it. Yep. And so if you're not actually of the UK, I don't know that it necessarily hits in the same way. Because I've noticed some very favourable reviews coming out of publications like The Guardian, which I haven't seen them coming out of international publications. So I think it's hitting there just that little bit stronger.
Yeah, perhaps. I'd say there's a universality to the grief that's expressed in this that would...
Yeah, but it's still not that same guttural connection to it. It's different. Stories are often of a culture and of a people, and sometimes you're just not quite of that, even if you understand the idea conceptually or intellectually.
Yeah, which probably speaks to my point about why this could have been a bigger version of this and maybe conveyed that in a way that uses the medium to convey that better. Anyway, that's my point. You did say, why the hell aren't you reviewing Conclave? I forgot it was out January 9, and I saw it a little while ago, so I do apologise for that. I have seen Conclave, and it is great as everyone says it is. It has one of the... Talking about twist endings, like we did on a podcast several weeks ago, it has an ending that puts all of the film into an entirely different perspective, and which I thought was hilarious. That's probably not the review you were expecting, but it is such a classically anti-religious piece of cinema that I just found it so invigorating, those final 10 minutes. So maybe you want to comment on that, or what did you think of it?
Look, I love this movie. When the Oscar race happens, there's a film which is bubbling away in the background. If this ends up becoming the sort of surprise win, in that it's a film not called Amelia Perez, okay, I would be very unsurprised to see it being Conclave. I think it speaks to that same audience of... movie fans who were probably sort of taken with other religious-themed movies like, say, Spotlight a couple of years ago, which not to say that Spotlight, which is about, sexual impropriety in the Catholic Church, based on the actual events that took place, not to say that this is any way the same sort of tone, but I think the same audience will react in a very sort of favourable way to it. This is not... It's serious, but also not. There's a lot of high camp elements to this. This is a film which is about political intrigue and back and forth about, getting behind your guy and then finding out... and they're all guys, because obviously, ish. It's all, male priests that people are voting for. Or bishops. What I use to get into the right...
Cardinals.
Cardinals.
Cardinal?
Everyone's got a hat.
Big, tall hat.
It's all about the political back and forth and who you're supporting and who you're getting behind.
And all the machinations that go along with it, and all the arguing about what's ultra-conservative and who's not progressive. And then in that last...
I'm going to edit that, Simon, because you've said too much.
Okay.
Yeah, you've said way too much.
I may have, yes.
What I will say is, because we've all seen movies before, there's a character that gets introduced into this one who is the least likely person to get through to the end, and... when you reach the end and see who actually ends up being sort of voted in as Pope, that person's definitely a strong contender.
Yeah.
Okay? We're not going to say much more than that.
Okay, I'll leave it at that, but it's a great ending.
I do think that this movie, which is a film which is very much about the integrity of the church and where they want to see the church go politically moving forward, whether or not it should be, as some people are vying for, to be a lot more progressive. Other people want to see a bit more of a retrench to where Latin is the core language of the church and get rid of Vatican II and all that kind of business.
Yep.
Okay, this film makes a very concerted effort to say, hey, look, there's actually a really interesting progressive way they could go. And when you see the end of the movie, you'll be like, well, that was not something I expected at the beginning of this movie. And to me, it was fantastic. But look, it's not just about the way the movie winds out. I think there is so much to grab onto, so many great performances and characters, and this great sort of metaphor that's running throughout the movie where they're all in this conclave, which is a locked off building where they're all going to vote to see who the next pope is without being influenced by the outside world. But little glimpses as to what's happening outside is all getting in as well, which is that there's violent skirmishes taking place and there's definitely some political uprisings, but no one in the building, nor us as viewers, ever find out what that is. And a lot of that is a metaphor for the way the church operates, in that a lot of it is decisions being made in a very cloistered environment that rarely takes into account the views and political turmoil of the outside world. And often it's people within that church environment pushing their ideas out as opposed to really hearing what the world wants and bringing that in.
I think if this is going to feature at the Oscars, it may be Ralph Fiennes' trophy that they take away. I think his body of work to date has been extraordinary. He hasn't won an Oscar. His performance in this is so layered and so modern, but also so torn by the traditions of the church that is all on his wonderful face to see. I'm not surprised that he's turning up everywhere at the moment, at parties and at other award ceremonies that we won't mention. But I think I can't even think off the top of my head who the front runner for the best actor. Who won the other night? I can't remember. But
it doesn't matter because the Golden Globes... Sorry, I'm going to say the name, Simon.
Oh, you said it!
The Golden Globes don't indicate anything. In fact, historically, they almost never do.
Oh, the bear has been poked. Oh, no. Let's move on because this could go on for hours. You don't know what I've been through before this podcast, people. You don't know what I've been through to get a mention of the Golden Globes into this podcast, and then he said it. Oh, I feel so upset. I feel dirty.
You should, because they're garbage. Simon, ask me what I've been watching.
Oh, Dan, apart from the Golden Globes, what else have you been watching?
Okay, I was talking earlier about the Pitt framing a new return to network TV. This isn't quite that. This still has a lot of the hallmarks of traditional streaming, but it does bring in some broadcast sensibilities. It's Dick Wolf's first entry point into streaming dramas. Okay,
Very
it's called
uncomfortable
On
with
Call.
that sentence. Yep.
Dick Wolf's a person. His name's Richard Wolf, Simon.
Dick Wolf's entry point. I just can't see.
Grow up, Simon.
All right, okay.
Oh, it's a cop drama. It's set around Los Angeles, effectively. It's a lot of sort of body cam footage mixed in with other security camera footage and, just regular, camera work. Half-hour TV program, 8 episodes. You're going to see some classic old school people in there. This is a TV series where not only is Noah Wyle back on our screens, but his ER co-star, Eric LaSalle, also back on screen.
Wow. There's a name I haven't heard for a long time.
Eric LaSalle, one of TV's great actors who, outside of ER, never really got enough of a fair shake.
No, he did not.
That guy does some incredible work on ER, and I'm just amazed that he never got his own showcase straight after ER because he absolutely deserved it. Anyway, On Call, it drops on Amazon Prime, streaming as of today when this goes out. I'm going to drop in a movie here that I saw. It's also one of these movies which is picked to do reasonably well at the Academy Awards. I'm going to put it out there. I think Conclave is actually going to do a clean sweep going through. I think that you're going to find surprise after surprise.
There's no clean
where
sweep
people
this
just keep
year.
on saying, Conclave, and people will be like, what? How did Anora not get nominated? Anora, which I saw yesterday, I think is perfectly fine. It's about 40 minutes too long. I think the titular character, the Anora, or Annie, as she goes by for most of the movie, I think it's a winning performance, okay, by the actor whose name I haven't quite...
Mikey Madison,
who people may know from better things. I think that she puts in a winning performance. I don't think that there's, enough of a character there. I don't get why people are so enraptured with her, because outside of the performance, she's a nothing character. You don't know anything about her, really, outside of the fact she has a sister. Okay, that's kind of about it.
She has dreams that the Russian gangster boy may or may not make her come true.
But you never know what those dreams are.
To get out of the culture she's living in. She's a dancer who moonlights.
No, you're putting that on the character, making your assumptions. She seems perfectly happy doing that as a job. She doesn't seem to have anything seen within the movie that she actually wants to get out of that life. That is not depicted in the film.
No, I
you're just
disagree
assuming.
with that. No,
that's
I'm not
you
assuming.
that's you being dismissive of people doing sort of sex-related work.
I'm not being dismissive of that. I'm speaking entirely just of the Anora character in the film that you're reviewing. I think that is implied in the film, and I think that is part of who she is. She sees an opportunity by marrying this woman, by marrying this British gangster boy to get out of the life
Russian,
that she's
Simon.
in. Russian.
He's Russian. Clearly,
Russian
you weren't
gangster.
watching the movie. Anyway, look, there's the majority of people are walking out of Anora loving it, but there is a very strong swell of people who are like, I don't get it. And I'm certainly part of the I don't get it crowd. A film that I absolutely did get, okay, is a film that I've not been able to watch since the mid-90s when it first came out on VHS. It's a film called Love and Other Catastrophes.
Oh my God.
Simon, you and I were talking about this movie right in the early days of this podcast.
Yes, we were.
As being one of those great Australian films that just isn't available anywhere. It's available.
Where? Where can I watch this now?
It's been gussied up, okay? The film, it's a low-budget movie, okay? So it can only ever look so good.
Yeah.
But they've remastered it somewhere, and it's currently streaming now on Broly, which is Umbrella Entertainment streaming
The Umbrella
service.
people. God bless them. They do good work for our film culture. They do a lot of this gussying up, as you call it.
Yeah. Free to access, so broly.com.au. So in Australian parlance, like Broly, like Umbrella. Okay.
Frances
Check out the website.
O'Connor, was that the Love and Other Catastrophe? Was that her? Yeah.
Yeah. But Matt Day's in there as well. It's a really fun, charming cast. The
really
film
is.
today is just as charming today as it was back then. It absolutely feels like a film from 1996.
Oh, I believe
okay?
that.
Like, it is rooted in 1996. It's
beat that.
magnificent. I really had a great time with it. And also it runs for maybe 80 minutes at most. It is
Perfect.
a quick...
Like every film should.
Yeah, it's good. You know what should have been 80 minutes?
Anora,
Because
yep.
it barely had 45 minutes of story in that thing, Simon.
Yeah, I so totally agree with you. I can see you didn't get it. All right, and finally,
Simon,
you go...
there was nothing to get. You know what else there wasn't anything to get?
Yeah.
Kevin Smith's new movie, the 4:30 movie.
Oh, boy.
My God, I haven't seen anything this bad since I saw Clerks 3.
Or before that, Yoga Hoses. What was it called? The one with Lily Rose Depp in it. We've come full circle back to Nosferatu.
Look, Yoga Hoses, I made 5 minutes of the way into, and I could do no more. I will say, the 4:30 movie, for the first 5-ish minutes, the first 5-ish minutes are a phone call between this guy to this girl that he's had a missed opportunity with. Okay, and it's actually really charming and kind of funny. And I was watching this guy, you know what? This is not too bad. And then that phone call ended, and the rest of the movie continued. And my God, is this just a terribly painful movie?
What's going on with Kevin Smith?
Exactly.
Is he literally a spent force? Has he done all that he's capable of doing?
Well, because he made... Okay, let's run through the filmography.
Yes.
Clerks.
Good. Splash.
I-
Made it huge.
Quite like it.
Decade
It's
defining.
one of my favourites. I love that film. I think it's great. Okay? More Rats. I can appreciate why some people didn't really care for the movie, but to me, it ticked a lot of boxes. It's a beloved film of mine. I see its flaws, but, I don't care. I still really like it. Chasing Amy, back to Clerks level. I think it does some really amazing things. A little bit dated with the sexual politics these days, but, if you appreciate it for a movie of its time, there's some very strong characters in there. You can... So I'm not going to trash Anora again. I'm going to steer clear. Chasing Amy, I think it's a beloved film for so many people for a reason. Okay, and then after that, it's just been downhill.
Terrible.
The only time he's made Dogma was almost watchable.
I like Dogma.
It was rough going for most of it. There was a movie he did called Red State, which is like a horror film, which was surprisingly quite good.
Yes.
But yeah, the rest
That's
of it's
something
just
to
been-
say, but everything else has been awful. Just awful.
I just don't know what he's doing. It's been just dreadful.
Does he still do that podcast? Does he still do the podcast?
I don't know. Who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares? He's bought a cinema now. Good on him. But he's stacking it with a whole bunch of
Kevin Smith films.
bullshit. Yeah. Anyway, it is what it is. Also, you know what his worst achievement was? Blocking me on Twitter. But,
Did he block you?
Jokes on him. I shut down my account.
Wow.
Not because of him. There were other factors.
Gee, I didn't know you're at odds with Kevin Smith. That might explain
why?
why you don't like his music. His
I
movies.
I don't care his music either.
Oh, no one does.
Yeah. I probably spoke a truth that he didn't care for and tagged him into it.
Wow.
Anyway, folks, let's get out of here. This has been the Screen Watching Podcast. My name has been Dan Barrett. Find me at alwaysbewatching.com. It's a newsletter. It lands in your inbox 5, 6, 7, 8 times a week. Who knows? Sometimes I'm prolific. Sometimes Actually, no, I'm always prolific. There's just too much. Simon Foster, you do a movie-based website. Where is it?
Screen-space.net. Although, as we discussed previously off air, I am going through a few changes with my social media platforms. I am considering doing a bit of a makeover of where and how you can view my rantings. I'll keep you up to date on those, all you valued listeners and followers, as that unfolds.
Yeah, it would be a Ricky Lake style makeover, a Ricky makeover, as we called it in the 90s.
Yeah, a Ricky makeover. I'd look good as Ricky Lake. She was good in Hairspray.
Yeah, you've got a very Ricky Lake Hairspray kind of a vibe about you.
I've heard that many times before.
Folks, this has been Screen Watching. We'll be back next week. More of this nonsense. We'll see you then.